Now, let me show you what productivity does for this country, and I'm going to show you what is happening to America. In the early turn of the century, most people were in agriculture. 69% of the workforce was in agriculture. Due to productivity, 1900 was 38%, by the 30s it was 21%, by the 60s 8%, and today it's 1%. 1% of our people produces all of the food for not only our country, but exports as well. Now, if you compare that to India, India still has 52% of their people in agriculture against our 1%. You talk about productivity, take a look at that number. You take a look at China, which is a very productive country, and yet 36% of their population is involved in agriculture. So you can see the productivity of this country when they can take 1% of the people against 35 and 50% and still produce just as much. But my all-time favorite example of the productivity of this country is what happened during the Second World War, and it's the most awesome story I can tell you because it shows you what happens when America comes together. It is unstoppable. There is nobody that could stop us. So what happened is, during the Second World War, we were the most ill-prepared country for a war. Germany had been preparing for 10 years, and we were in the horse and buggy. Literally, most of our field artillery was still being pulled by horses. We were so ill-prepared, 85% of our equipment was obsolete. Hitler had overrun England and France. They overran Holland in 5 days. Britain was on its knees at Dunkirk. They left 50% of their war machine there. And General Patton only had 325 tanks, and he was so short of nuts and bolts for those tanks that he had to order them through the Sears catalog. Now, this is a country that was about to ready to go into a world war against a country like Germany that had been preparing for 10 years. So Roosevelt recruited 2 businessmen, and he told them, we've got to get ready. Churchill had been pounding on his door. He finally saw the light, and he started preparing for war. Bill Knudsen was the right-arm man of Henry Ford, who went to work for General Motors. He was an immigrant, came over from Denmark. He started working there for Henry Ford, moved over to General Motors, took over their Chevrolet division, became the president eventually, and he had a slogan. He wanted to sell 1 Chevrolet for every one that Henry Ford sold to Ford. And he had a slogan called "One for One." 1 Chevy for 1 Ford. He took over General Motors. They recruited him. He went around the country and recruited businessmen. And to the credit of President Roosevelt, he listened to Bill Knudsen and he said, you've got to let the American businessmen make money, because they have to have that incentive. There is no greater incentive, not even greater than patriotism, is that private enterprise incentive. Let them make money and they'll produce anything you want. Him and Henry Kaiser, who worked on the ships, mobilized American industry, and look what they did. We were only producing 1,000 planes a year before the war. By the end of the year, we were producing 4,767 planes per month, 286,000 during 5 years. We went from 1,000, which at that rate only had 5,000, went up to 286,000. We were only building 4 ships per month. We ended up building 147 ships a month, 8,800 in total. They only had 500,000 antique Springfield rifles, and they created 2.6 million machine guns. It used to take them 7 months to create a ship. They ended up producing this ship in 10 days, and one time Henry Kaiser wanted to prove how great his team was, that he made a bet that they could produce it in 5 days, and they actually produced a ship like that in 5 days. That is the productivity and the potential of America, and the Germans could not withstand that. They outmaneuvered us. They did a lot of good things from a military standpoint, but they could not withstand that huge force. Even Stalin, at the end of the war, raised a toast with Winston Churchill and Roosevelt. He says, to the American production machine, who without we could not have won this war. That's what got down to it, is the American productivity. So that's what we have going to compete against the world.